My boyfriend is a great gift giver. He's the kind of guy that finds things you never knew you needed. This Christmas, he did not disappoint. I unwrapped my gift to find Darth Vader on the cover of a book, dressed in Elizabethan garb. William Shakespeare's Star Wars Verily, A New Hope by Ian Doescher rested in my hands. Shakespeare in Star Wars? As an actress, a Shakespeare geek, and a science fiction fan, I was intrigued, if not already sold on the book. What I didn't expect when reading this was the idea of using Star Wars Verily, A New Hope as a teaching tool, not just a fun read. The book by Doescher is essentially a translation of the Star Wars A New Hope script into iambic pentameter and 16th century grammar. For those of you not familiar with the Star Wars franchise, it is a science fiction saga about a plucky rebellion that rises up to defeat the corrupt, overbearing regime. The book is written in 5 acts and includes the lengthy soliloquies one comes to expect from a Shakespearean play. For example, when R2-D2 is speaking with other characters, he only uses beeps and squeaks, but when he is alone on stage, he has full speeches. R2 says to himself, "The fool who sets the game in motion shall appear unto C-3PO and Luke, no more than if he were an errant knave." There's also a cute little sonnet after the acknowledgments. Verily, A New Hope is also formatted like a play, and then it gives you a character list at the beginning of the text and stage directions interspersed among the dialogue. However, this book is a lot prettier than the typical paperback published play. The cover art is intricate yet elegant. It's a hardback book, and there are lovely illustrations throughout. I believe this book would make a great introduction to Shakespeare for a young person. I still remember very well being taught Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet when I was in 8th grade. It was a mess. Most of my class only showed interest when we were watching the movie, but we all know they were waiting for the nudity. However, what if middle school and maybe high school teachers use this book in the classroom? Kids not familiar with Shakespeare may find the story of Star Wars more relatable than many Shakespeare plays. Also, the Star Wars saga has many similar themes to Shakespeare plays such as love, betrayal, and family. Using this book to discuss these themes and motifs would be a great way to ease young people into analyzing more sophisticated literature. Because what's the real difference between the original Star Wars and a Shakespeare play like Romeo and Juliet? The language. The fierce feud and story of the Capulets and the Montagues is no more complex than that of the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Empire. It's the language that confuses students and clouds the underlying plot. The first time I saw Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, I was in 4th grade and I'd only seen 1 or 2 Shakespeare plays before it. I was so confused. I had to ask my mom for an explanation and synopsis during the intermission. Since then, I've seen at least 1 Shakespeare play every year, and I've had the immense pleasure of seeing A Midsummer Night's Dream once again. It was no longer the massive confusion it was to me the first time. After years of exposure to the language, I could understand what they were saying, so the plot and character relationships came out clearly, like cream rising to the top. The negative reviews on Amazon that I found had some pretty good points about the shortcomings of the book. Joseph Siegler writes, "I started jumping around and never read for long periods of time, because frankly, this isn't how people read anymore." That's fair. Unless you're an actress, an English major, or an Elizabethan fanatic, you likely do not read 16th century literature for fun. But what if you are one of those things and you never realized it? Or what if you're just a typical student who would like to read a book in school that you don't hate? So I don't find that argument quite strong enough. However, J. Wiles Parker makes a pretty good case for why this book is a novelty at best, as their review is titled. Parker writes, "The author seems to have a base knowledge of Shakespeare, but no true understanding of how the bard actually wrote and structured his plays. There are too many asides by characters, too much interjection of the chorus to tell random bits of action, generally unnecessary, I might add, and words like troth are thrown in willy-nilly without proper context usage. Also, simply adding ith and ist to words does not make them Shakespearean, nor does constantly using thee, thou, and I. For the last, are we in a pirate movie? No, it's Star Wars. I will give the author credit where due, though. He does manage to get the iambic pentameter right, which is something properly Shakespearean. Yes, it's not perfect Shakespeare. I definitely noticed the overabundance of asides, and the chorus took me by surprise. However, the chorus does serve the purpose of explaining the action that would have happened in a scene without dialogue in the movie. Overall, though, Parker is right in that it's not a very good imitation of Shakespeare's writing. I would still give this book more than 2 stars. Also, it may not be a terrible thing if the language isn't 100% accurate to Shakespeare's style. After all, if we're looking at this book simply as an introduction to Shakespeare, language that is somewhere between our contemporary English and Elizabethan English would be a nice stepping stone. The thing is, an introduction to something doesn't need to be perfect, just simple enough not to overwhelm them, and fun enough to catch their interest. I would not consider Verily a New Hope an astounding work of literature, but I very much enjoyed reading it, because sometimes what you need is a light, fun read. An anonymous reviewer on the Barnes & Noble site agrees with me. He or she clearly had a blast reading it, and even says, "All giggles aside, though, it is a well-written and thorough book, and I appreciate that you can tell the author wanted it to be fun for people to read, but not in a way that made it a joke or a gimmick." I'm glad I'm not the only one out there who liked it, and I seriously think it would be helpful for young people in or out of the classroom.